Hello and welcome to Cville360, a show to inform and engage the Charlottesville community. I'm Brian Wheeler, Director of Communications for the City of Charlottesville. During the coronavirus pandemic, the city's leadership knows you want to hear from us frequently about our actions. We also want to hear from you and provide opportunities for engagement. We've launched this program on our streaming sites, Comcast Channel 10, and on a companion Zoom webinar so you can tune in live and on demand while practicing social distancing. The webinar allows you to join the broadcast and ask questions of our guest. If you want to try the webinar, visit charlottesville.org/Zoom for the registration information. Today's topic is the City of Charlottesville's current response to the coronavirus, COVID-19. I will talk with our guest for about 15 minutes, and then we will start taking your questions. You can type them in the Q&A module of the webinar, or you can click the raise your hand icon and I will bring you onto the program and you can speak to our guest. Joining us on our very first episode of Cville360, well, we're starting at the top of city government, of course. I'm pleased to have in the studio Tarron Richardson, the Charlottesville City Manager, and via our Zoom webinar, our Mayor, Nikuyah Walker. And the first thing I want to do is welcome Dr. Richardson, and let's check in with the Mayor and make sure that we can see and hear Mayor Walker. Can you hear us, Mayor Walker?
Yes, I can. And thanks for doing this, Brian.
Thank you. Great. Well, Dr. Richardson and Mayor Walker, the coronavirus is a challenge, no city manager, county executive, mayor, or governor has faced in our lifetimes. And it's one thing to have a natural disaster in one locality or region, but this pandemic is impacting the entire country, and it's changing and getting more challenging every day. So maybe we could start with Dr. Richardson and follow up with Mayor Walker on the same question. But first, tell us what the current state of city government is and our community's response.
Thank you, Brian. And as would like to echo what the mayor has said before, and appreciate this opportunity for you putting this together. But the main thing is that I want everyone to know in our community that we are still open for business. And that was one of the major things that I wanted to make sure happens. I wanted to make sure that we were able to still provide our public services to the community. And although we don't have everyone in City Hall or in our surrounding facilities at the desk, we still have folks working remotely throughout the area. And I just want to say one other thing is too, from the city standpoint, we're working with due diligence to ensure that we are protecting our most vulnerable populations, such as our homeless community, as well as our low-income individuals, as well as our employees who are on the front line every day, such as our police and fire.
And I'm sorry I didn't have the video on you. We're learning some new tricks here, but glad to see you now on the camera there. You talked about some of the things we're doing as a business to keep government running, and I think our continuity planning has paid off. And I tell you, it has been impressive, the support our IT department has delivered, and to allow people to even receive phone calls from their homes. So that part of business, I hope, has been seamless for our clients. I want to unmute Mayor Walker's microphone and give her a chance to talk about this question. So Mayor Walker, how would you describe the state of government right now and our community's response?
So our response, I think the first and most important thing was to figure out how to ensure that our the safety of the employees so that they could do this work from home if that were possible for them. And I'm very thankful for the leadership in making sure that was the case. The next phase, of course, and all throughout that initial planning was to how do we prepare for this uncharted territory. And I'm very thankful for the leadership in city government for that. This initiative that you're doing with Charlottesville's 360, what the city manager just talked about, into ensuring that what citizens needed, they could still access from government. the work of our police chief, Chief Brackney, our fire chief, Chief Baxter, our human services director, Kaki Demick, the Department of Social Services, represented by the Assistant Director, Sue Moffitt. I'm sure that Diane Kuknio is there doing, I've just heard Sue's name quite a bit too. And so I'm just so thankful that these key departments, I've seen public works staff out still doing their work, and it's hard to keep business as usual. Our drivers, cat drivers out, still driving when you're worried about such unknown and the safety, not only of yourself, but that that you have to go home every day. So I'm so thankful, one, that we've made the safety of our employees a priority, and that every day when we're learning new things that we can do better, that we are addressing those things.
Thank you, Mayor Walker. This is a global problem, as we said, but it's also a regional challenge for us. So maybe Dr. Richardson, you could talk about how we are working together, the city, Albemarle County, and the University of Virginia, to keep residents safe.
Yes, we have a lot of collaborative initiatives that we're doing, but first as we have been doing since I've gotten here, was to have our internal meeting, our CIMT meetings on a weekly basis, and now moving on to where we're also communicating with the county on a day-to-day basis through our IMT, as well as having our larger meetings at the EOC through our unified command. So we continue to work in collaboration with our regional partners that we're able to pull information from different areas and try to find different resources that we can utilize to enhance our overall services that we provide to the public. And I'm grateful for those relationships that we do have with the university as well as with the county, and then our other departments that we work with throughout the state. So I'm encouraged by those relationships, and I think we have the best folks in those positions to be able to lead our city through this emergency.
And Dr. Richardson, it's funny, when you arrived here, I remember you commenting on the acronym SOUP.
Yes.
That is Charlottesville and regional government. And you threw out a couple acronyms. You are now fluent in our local acronym language.
I said
so
we could make a lot of money if we create a dictionary of the acronyms that we use in this community.
That's right. So CIMT is our critical incident management team. The EOC is the Emergency Operations Center. And people are working hard at all those venues
yes.
to make sure we're safe. Mayor Walker, is there anything you would like to add about that, about the regional cooperation?
I would just like to add how important it is. I know initially when you are faced with any challenge, and especially a challenge this grave, people immediately want to try to figure out how to get our own house in order. So I know that there were a few hiccups there when, trying to figure out the, communication gaps when everyone was scrambling to ensure that, that they had their, was putting out as many fires of their own as possible. But I'm glad to hear that that is going better, and that is going to be essential in moving forward, because as we know, we are while there are some invisible boundary lines that they really don't mean anything. And especially when you're dealing with a virus of, this magnitude, we can't just be concerned with our 50,000 residents. We are and have to make plans to ensure the safety of hundreds of thousands of people initially, and fully understand that we are a global community.
That's a great point. And I think when it comes to keeping our distance, that is one of the key messages we've been saying. Is there anything else, Dr. Richardson, you think that the people listening should be doing right now? I mean, what should be the most important thing?
I would say the most important things is that we've been mentioning since the beginning. We talked about distancing. We talked about the number of folks that are gathering in one place. And I think if we adhere to those guidelines, I think that we'll be in a better place eventually. But I think more so, and I work with the mayor a whole lot, so you always have to keep your hand wipes and washing your hands and making sure that you are keeping your distance as we are today.
Yeah, and we'll bring Mayor Walker in to respond to that. And I do think, Mayor Walker, your practices, which are well known by those who watch you and see you in council chambers, so you haven't had to learn many new tricks, where the rest of us have a lot of new behaviors.
Yes, and very important behaviors, especially when you're up against something that you can't see. And it's really hard, and it's been a challenge for people to grasp that, the magnitude of this situation, because there's so many unknowns and so many uncertainties. So social distancing is just, stay away from people you don't have to come in contact with. That is a very hard thing. We're social beings. We want to be near and next to people. We want to communicate. We thrive off the energy of others, some of us more than others. And it's important for now that we only come in contact with people that we absolutely have to, and that we only go into spaces that we absolutely have to enter into. And that just means, no unnecessary, even for places that are essential, like grocery store runs. People want to be able to go. They're used to having every ingredient that they can think of. But at this time, you really have to ask yourself, do I need that? Because while we're saying, keep your distance, you could walk into a grocery store while someone else is walking out of, and a sneeze, it could be that simple that you breathe that in, and then you're dealing with a potential infection. So it only really takes one person, and one person already being exposed to expose one other person. So even though there was the conversation around just a room full of 10 people, a room full of 10 people could be very dangerous. So it's really just you, your immediate family. There's some people that you'll only be able to have window conversations with, that you'll only be able to drop stuff off at the doorstep or the front door. But it's just key to not go into places or be around people, no matter how much you love them, that you don't have to at this time.
Thank you. Mayor Walker, we got one piece of feedback on the webinar that because you've got your camera in a vertical mode, we're not seeing all of your face. I don't know if that's true for everyone on the webinar or on our TV broadcast, but you might adjust the view to get higher up on yourself there. And then, Dr. Richardson, we sent some letters to the governor about this social distancing issue, and I wonder if you could talk about what we ask of the governor regarding a stay-at-home order.
And I will speak to that, but I think the mayor can present a little bit more on that. But what we were basically asking is to put more in place so that we would have more teeth, so to speak, in terms of enforcement, as well as trying to provide our community with more guidelines in terms of what they should do in order for them to remain safe throughout these trying times.
And Mayor Walker, we'll check back in with you. The letter to the governor, you sent one, Chief Baxter and Chief Brackney both signed a letter. Tell us a little bit about your goals with that communication.
So the letter to the governor was asking for the governor to state explicitly, use the words, stay in your home, to make that a mandate and an order, and to be more clear about the guidelines by which people leave their home, and not leave it so open-ended for citizens to be able to choose on their own. And so that was the goal of the letter, just to state, mandated, stay in your home. And we didn't get that.
Great. So the key messages, I think, social distancing, stay at home, unless it's really an essential visit that you need to take. Dr. Richardson, let's talk about some of the key challenges. I mean, what is ahead for local government? This is, again, uncharted territory that we're heading into, but what do you see as the key challenges?
I think some of the key challenges that we're looking at in terms of local government is just the financial aspect of it. We really don't know the impact that it will have on our current budget, which is FY20, and then going into FY21. Now, we've made some projections in terms of where we're at this current point. I know that we're looking at probably around 1.2 million in revenues that we will not realize in fiscal year 20, and then moving into 21, about 4.7 million at this time. Now, if things do improve, we will make those adjustments. But right now, as Councilman Snook mentioned in one of his articles, was that we were looking at $5 million in potential cuts moving forward. And that's what we want to make sure that we're actually looking at our budget and making sure that we're able to maintain that over throughout the end of this fiscal year. But the main thing is that as I talk with the employees to make sure that, you know, we are keeping everyone on the payroll that we can at this time, because I want to ensure that everyone has money to be able to provide for their families. And you know, right now we're trending cautiously, I will say, in everything that we do. We're looking at our overall expenditures on a weekly basis. We're still meeting as a budget team to make sure that we are able to continue throughout the rest of this fiscal year and make sure we're prepared for next fiscal year.
And Mayor Walker, I mean, for the first time maybe in Charlottesville's history, we don't know when the next meeting of City Council will be, right? So what challenges is Virginia law presenting us, and how do we get through this budget cycle?
So I think even before I start with the budget, I would just like to talk a little bit about, you know, the first challenge that we have is just the unknowns of this. According to the health release that we got yesterday from the health department, we have 9 known cases in Albemarle, 7 in Charlottesville, 3 in Fluvanna, 4 in Louisa, and 1 in Nelson. And all of us can remember when those numbers were 0, right? So that's the first thing, that we all have to acknowledge that there's so many unknowns and so many uncertainties, and anything that we attempt to put in place today could instantly change, and that we have to be open and ready for those, you know, kind of conversations. Next is, because of that unknown and uncertainty, we have to be able to say to people honestly, like, we're trying our best, but we can't say with 100% certainty that we can keep you, you know, safe. And then we have to be willing to explain to people what we mean by that, and how, you know, grade the potential outcomes, when all that you really have to tell people is to stay away from others, wash your hands for at least 20 seconds, and clean the spaces that you occupy. After we move from there, it's, you know, ensuring the health and safety as much as we can of our citizens, of our staff, to battle with the mixed messages that we're getting from the federal government and the open kind of ended messages that we receive from the state government, and that we try as much as we can to make sure that we have the science on this and that we're listening to those in the medical profession. I am, you know, the letter that went up to the governor to attempt to secure the personal protective equipment that our medical professionals, our fire and police. I've even received calls from, you know, people that work in our DSS office who are concerned about themselves and their family when responding to calls. So I think that those are some of the, like, moving forward, they're going to be some of our biggest challenges. None of us dealt with this the last time we dealt with it as a world in 1918. So all of us, this is a new experience. We're going to be learning as we go, and we're going to have to make sure that we're making decisions that maybe the people above us at the state and federal level are not ready to make, or maybe they're tiptoeing around. So I think that's going to be one of our greatest challenge. But if we can figure out a way to make sure that that happens, we will be able to take better care of our community.
And I think, Mayor Walker appropriately put the focus back on the public health issues and less about, some of the nuts and bolts challenges that those of us in City Hall are having to think about. When can we convene City Council and get some things done? We know there will be a tax rate that has to be passed by City Council. We know at some point there will be a budget approved. And in the most recent council meeting, it was a special meeting at which they passed an ordinance that will give them some flexibility down the road to have meetings to talk about the things that relate to continuity of government. And certainly our fiscal health is going to be part of continuity of government. So I want the public to know that we have put some measures in place that will allow us to get some decisions made when they absolutely have to.
And I'm grateful for your team to be able to ensure that it does happen. I know that we've been doing our last couple of meetings online and for the public to see from their homes. So I just want to thank you and your team for putting that together.
Thank you. The webinars have been an interesting addition to this, and I can tell you right now we have 63 people watching via the webinar, and I'm sure a lot more via Facebook and Twitter and on Channel 10. So it's great we have all these different opportunities, and people are already queuing up questions. Before we hear from the audience, just want to ask both of you if there's anything else you want to share about your experiences, your concerns, your priorities. Dr. Richardson.
I would just say once again, my main priority right now is our employees and making sure that our community are receiving the public services that they need, and to make sure that we remain open so that the public can contact us if there's any questions that they may have about anything. I want to make sure that we continue to have that those services for our community.
Thank you. And Mayor Walker, is there anything you want to say before we go into the Q&A?
Just that the goal is, you see some of the reports that we have heard internationally, death tolls of hundreds, 500, 600, 700 people per day, and that's the goal, for that not to happen here. And whatever we need to do to ensure that is my top priority.
Great. Well, the webinar allows you to join the broadcast and ask questions of our guests. If you want to try the webinar and you're not on it right now, you can go to charlottesville.org/Zoom for the registration information, and pretty quickly you'll get a link to join the webinar. We are not taking questions via social media. There are only so many screens we can watch at once, so we are focusing on the webinar aspect for the engagement. If I call you and you're at home listening on speakers, you will need to turn them down. It's just like calling into a radio show and the host tells you to turn down your own radio. So we've got a number of questions in the Q&A section right now, and I'll just start bringing them to both your attention, and you can respond to them. The first one is from one of our neighbors, and he says, it looks like this will be a matter that will be with us for a while. And neighborhood leaders are concerned that we don't seem to have a clearinghouse to be directed to for their concerns. And he's asking if there's a letter being prepared to city neighborhood leaders about this. Dr. Richardson or Mayor Walker?
Well,
go ahead, Mayor.
Okay. Well, in terms of neighborhood leaders and association, I know that Councilor Hill made this a top priority over the last week of hers. And so I would have to get with her to ask her more information about the progress of that. But from my understanding, she has been communicating with the neighborhood leaders, and there was a flyer that went out for them to, for more information from them, and for the pooling of resources that they've been doing in individual neighborhoods. So that's my understanding to date of that, and I will get with her about that?
It's a great question. Mark Cavett asked that question. A couple things I would point to. We do have a community resource line, and let me give you that phone number. It's 434-234-4490. That is one resource that the city has been working on with the United Way and some other partners to offer up resources. The mayor mentioned Heather Hill, a city councilor who's been working on this. She will be on our program Tuesday at 11 a.m. to talk about this work in the neighborhoods. And I see people commenting that they have received the flyers. So it's great. We've had a lot of grassroots efforts by this community, and there's no way the city can do it all, and people don't expect us to. But it's great that our community and neighbors are helping neighbors. So that's great. Next question is from Adrienne Dent, and she says, at this time, what are Dr. Richardson and Mayor Walker, what are they seeing as the greatest needs among our underserved population?
You want to answer that, Mayor, or you want me to?
You can go ahead.
Yeah, I just think more so with that, as I mentioned before, that we're providing them with the public services that they need, and they are calling our services, our service line, as you just mentioned, to be able to get more information as well as be directed to the different programs that we can provide them with assistance.
Great.
And I'll
Go ahead, Mayor Walker.
just add from a community standpoint, the support Cville360 website, that is a resource that people can go on to access those services. I haven't been a major part of building that, so I don't know all the ins and outs, but I know there's been a major collaborative effort between community organizers, our human services department, and United Way and CACF. And so those resources through that website, individuals will be able to access more information. And then they can also volunteer to support neighbors in any way that they can through that site also.
Great, and that site again is supportcville.com. We have one participant in the webinar who has raised her hand, and others feel free to do so if you have a question. Kate Fraley, I'm going to bring you on. You're live with the mayor and Dr. Richardson. Go ahead with your question. You'll have to unmute your mic, or I might have just done it for you.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so I think that you all are doing a good job working in the moment. And I'd like to think about one thing that's going to happen in the future. I'm thinking about a lot of things that we'll need, weeks from now. One of them is if the criminal justice system advocates get what they're asking for, which is release of nonviolent prisoners in jails and prisons, I'm not sure all the people that might be released have any place to go. So I don't know if they have homes. I don't know if they have families here. I don't know anything. So I want to make sure that somebody is planning for their release in accepting them here and welcoming them here and making sure that they have all the services and all their needs are met.
Thank you. Mayor Walker?
So I spoke with the Commonwealth Attorney last week, Joe Platania, and that is one of the questions that they are asking for people who are on that nonviolent misdemeanor list. There were certain categories that they were going through first to attempt to get people who could be released without a major threat to the community. And in doing that, that is one of the questions they were asking. Where would you go, or do you have to go when you leave here? I also discussed with him the fact that some people may not have anywhere to go, but it's still the fewer people that we have, especially in any jail or prison, but our local jail, if there's a potential outbreak there, that it's better for all of us. And so we discussed what that could, potentially look like, and we talked about, Pacham and expanding services there. So we've had the discussions. We don't have all the answers, but they are having the discussion. And when I called the Commonwealth Attorney, this was already something that he was trying to figure out and do something about. So it's not something that I had to plant. It was a goal of his to ensure that there were as few people as possible in our local jail.
We're getting some very specific questions about some public health issues and health district related information. And what I'm going to suggest to our viewers is they are great questions, and they'll be perfect for Tuesday when we have the following guests joining us on Tuesday at 11 a.m. First, our fire chief, Chief Baxter. We will also have Catherine Goodman from the Health District, and she is the Public Information Officer for the Health District. We will have Kaki Dimmick on our Human Services staff, and we will have Heather Hill. So some of these I'm going to skip. I appreciate the questions.
And then also too, Brian, they can also go to the various websites as well as our website.
Absolutely.
They can go to the Thomas Jefferson Health District COVID-19 hotline, as well as their Twitter and Facebook pages, and then also to VDH website.
Yep. And Patricia Eldridge, that was one of your questions, so we appreciate you asking that. And to get to all those sites, you can go to charlottesville.org/coronavirus. We have links to the Health District and the CDC websites. The data is a little bit delayed, but at this point, we know it's going up every day. And so part of the delay is the reporting and the complexity of the testing. We've got another hand raised on the webinar, and it's Nancy Carpenter. And Nancy, we want to welcome you to the broadcast. And I'm going to unmute your mic. We might be unmuting each other. I'll let you do it. There you go.
Okay, I think I'm on.
You're on.
Okay, I just recently heard that there was a letter sent out to a number of landlords in the area asking them perhaps to mitigate issues with rent for the next, I think, 30 or 60 days. Is there a strategy beyond the letter, or is that just something to give our local landlords something to think about?
Yeah, so we sent that letter out. We can't mandate that landlords do anything. I know someone shared with me via email this morning that a landlord reduced someone's rent in half, who were, their family, they were having a couple challenges. Of course, a lot of people are. So the letter was an attempt to just get the landlords to think about, what the situation that we are experiencing, give them some information that, the Virginia Supreme Court had at this point halted all evictions so that they would not be able to evict people, to make sure that they had that information, but also wanting them to just think about the fact, just even moving forward, to start planning for this, that people may not be able to pay, their rent. And of course, not every landlord, and fully understand that, is in a situation where they don't need the money that was coming in, every month. So it wasn't to get people to not pay who could pay, but because we understand that landlords they are depending on that source as a source of revenue to come in to maintain their business too, but absolutely wanted them to think about the fact that there will be people who will be out of work and they won't be able to make their rents, and just to give them, just our thoughts about that and some information.
And Mayor Walker mentioned, people in the community facing economic hardships. We've got a couple questions related to city employees. One is there any possibility that employees are going to be laid off or they would stop being paid? And another has to do with emergency pay. I wonder if Dr. Richardson, you could talk about those two things.
Well, I'll talk about the first one, and you can come back and ask me the second question in a moment. But right now, as I mentioned, to all of our employees as well as to our council. I'm trying to do everything I can possible to ensure that our employees stay on the payroll. And that's, by asking all of our department directors as well as the managers to be able to look at their overall expenditures and look at ways that we can decrease our overall expenses at this time. And as we move forward, if conditions do improve, we can make adjustments. But right now, my main goal is to ensure that everyone continues to work. Now, your second question, I'm sorry.
So emergency pay, getting, I think, what is it, 2.5 times the normal rate or time and a half, those sorts of things when in the past there might have been an emergency where people are called to work when no one else can get to City Hall, right? Talk about those issues that we face as an employer.
Well, today, everyone is still working. We still have people in the offices, but just behind the scene. As far as the emergency pay, if it was something like a snowstorm when nobody else would come to work, or I always say like a natural disaster when everyone couldn't get to work, we would be able to do things like that. But this is an emergency we've never experienced before, and if we do those other things in terms of that would I would have to go to that next level, as you mentioned before. You had to lay off employees, and right now, that's not something that I'm looking forward to do. I want to make sure everyone keeps working, and our workforce continues to work, and make sure that people do have the necessary funding to be able to provide for their families.
We've got a comment or a question from Doug, I think it's Baris, from Ben & Jerry's in Barracks Road, and as a government employee, I'm thankful that I have a job right now and I'm getting paid. Thank you. But he's talking about how he's had to close indefinitely this week. And what sorts of support can the city provide businesses in our community?
I think that we've been working through that, and if they would call our Economic Development Department, they will be able to provide them with some answers to their questions that pertain to that. And moving forward, I know that the federal government is working on some packages for businesses. So I would say first, contact our Economic Development Office, and they can provide you with some resources.
Doug, I think that's good advice, and I know the city's economic development webpage has a lot of those resources. They've been building out a list of places you can go to get assistance. Of course, we're all waiting to see what the federal government stimulus package, for lack of a better term, is going to do for businesses, especially small business loans. But again, this is something we're all in together, uncharted territory. I want to just remind the webinar participants they can raise their hand if they want to get on live and ask a question. Otherwise, I will keep scrolling through some of the questions that I see both on the chat and in the Q&A. Let's see, question. Will information be online for resources instead of having to call in? Again, I think Celia Mills, that'll be a good question for Tuesday's show, where we can talk about some of the other things that have been made available. Right now, I think the call-in number, there are two of them. One of the call-in numbers relates to the health district, and that's a resource for all things COVID-19. And you can, we're going to put up that number for you. That's 972-6261. So that's the COVID-19 hotline. And then we also have the other number, which is a community resource line, 434-234-4490. So while some of those things are something you may want to take advantage of online, they may be able to point you to them. I'm seeing some comments that the mayor is trying to speak. So let me make sure, let me spotlight her video and see if you should be ready to go.
No. Okay. Yeah, I just had a couple from the past, the last two questions.
Oh, great.
Hi, Doug, and thank you, and we miss you. Doug provides cakes for the parties at Parks and Rec every week, and so we appreciate you and your team and everything that you've done for for us for years. And so I just wanted to say thank you, and that there's no way that we can do what we do in the city without the support of small businesses like you. So just know while we have no clear answers, and again, if we had them, we would get them. And we're waiting on federal and state legislation for us to be able to assist more. I do know that this is the only thing that Chris Engel is thinking about, and that whatever we can do, even without and it doesn't sound like much from speaking with him, and again, our apologies for that, but we will do it because we understand that for us to get back up and running, it will take businesses like Ben and Jerry's for us to be successful. So again, appreciate you, and we wish that things were different. I had another question, the earlier question about the employees. I just wanted to say that on behalf of council, anything that we can do to ensure that our employees remain employed and paid, we will do, and that is a top priority for us. And we understand that no employee will be able to function well if they are worried about just basic survival needs. So all of the counselors are, committed to working with the city management to ensure that that is possible. And that will more likely than not mean that we'll have some very hard discussions trying to keep everything afloat and steady when we go back into those budget discussions. So I'm just asking that people remember these questions and these times when we are back into that space and have to make some very hard decisions. I also want to say that in terms of the 2.5 times pay for individuals, while when that policy was created, it was created when someone thought of, a snowstorm. We had that big snowstorm a few years back, maybe it was 10, it doesn't seem like that long, but you're working then 2.5 times, those dollars don't add up the way that they would add up if you're thinking about being engaged with crises for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months. I mean, we have no idea. So Dr. Richardson made that decision, and we're still having discussions about what that looks like, but that decision was supported by council to be reviewed and changed. Now, what it changes to, we're still discussing, and we understand that there are differences between, our, I mentioned people before, our police department, our fire department, our social service, DSS workers, CPS workers, APS workers, some of the public utility crews that still have to go into, people homes. So we understand that for some people, it's just a different level of emergency that they encounter, and that it could be more detrimental to them than individuals working at home. So I just wanted for whomever asked that question to know that it is an ongoing conversation, and we're trying to figure it out and figure out what that looks like long term.
Thank you, Mayor. And we've got a quick question here. Will City Hall remain closed to the public next week? Is there anything we're ready to announce on that front?
We'll announce that probably going out to our employees, if that is an employee who's asking the question.
It says anonymous.
Okay, all right. But as I mentioned before, every 2 weeks we will give notification to our employees about City Hall being open back up, as well as to the public in advance of next week. And this actually puts us on this the 2-week period this Sunday. So yeah, I will be making that announcement to the employees either on Saturday or early Sunday morning. But also too, from that, as we always do, we'll communicate our hours of operation, our hours of operations to the public.
We had a question about collaboration with the school division.
Yes.
And I hope on the future program we'll have Dr. Atkins and some of her team on. But what can you tell us about our conversations with the schools?
We are still in constant communication with the school district as well as with the school board. Dr. Atkins and I, we have a conversation since this happened. We've been talking with each other at least 2 to 3 times a week. Just talking about where we're at in terms of, our reopenings or, the impact that it's having on our budgets as we work through it. Because as you know, we were in the budget process when, this emergency happened. So we're still talking about different things, and we're just talking about the immediate impact as well as looking at next fiscal year.
Mayor Walker, is there anything you'd like to add about our education system?
Yes, I would first just like to thank them for, trying to figure out how to take an entire system and put it online to ensure that their students, I still have a student at the high school, but I also have family members and friends who have children in all the schools in our district. So I really appreciate the teachers who are attempting to figure out this with this distant learning. I think to date they haven't been able to ensure that everyone has equal access to internet, and so they want to make sure that they are fair in the process. So I know that has taken some time. They spent some time attempting to figure out how to still feed our children who receive meals from the schools twice a week, and they've already modified that schedule from attempting to do it almost daily to a Monday and Wednesday schedule. And I know, just like our long-term concerns of what does this look like in terms of the fiscal aspects of it, and then also dealing with students who are going to graduate, who are sad from all their hard work and not fully understanding like what that will mean for graduation and things like that. So I really am thankful for Dr. Atkins and her leadership, and the school board members and the teachers, and all that they've been trying to do to keep the community engaged and spirits up. I know that they're working on trying to figure out childcare for some of the essential employees, and I've heard some people express, their fear of not being safe if there are more than 10 people in a room, and there are some people who are applauding that effort. So just to everybody, that everyone's trying to do the best they can and just trying to figure this all out, and understanding that meeting someone's need will mean that someone else is a little bit upset by that. So but we're all trying to do our best.
That's great. And like I said, we will definitely invite Superintendent Atkins and her team to come talk to us about what the school division's doing. We had a similar question, I assume, from an employee about how long remote working will be in effect, and I guess that's to be determined as well.
To be determined.
We don't know how long this is going to go.
We don't. But I will say, if that's an employee who's asking the question, once again, thank you. I want to say thank you for your continued commitment and dedication to our city, and still working while you're not in the office, because, like I said before, my main priority is to make sure that our residents in our community are getting our superior services that we provide on a daily basis.
Great. Dr. Richardson, we have a question about your role as Director of Emergency Management, and how does that fit in And remember, we have to watch the acronyms. But how does that fit into the overall regional approach to things?
Well, it just means that I'm basically just overseeing our day-to-day operations in terms of our police and fire, as well as our other departments, and making sure that there is some continuity between all of our departments and making sure that we are providing the necessary services to our community.
And should you want to, I mean, we know we want to have a stay-at-home order from the governor. Is that something you even have power to do locally? Do you know how that works?
That's a question I always like to defer to our city attorney, John Blair, before I make any statements like that. So I would wait on to answer
I
that.
assume we're asking the governor for a good reason. That seems like something that should be done statewide. Mayor Walker, is there anything you want to add on that?
Just that you're absolutely right. That is, the intention of getting the governor to do it, not only just for it to have statewide action, but that also that our leaders on the state and federal level are understanding that the implications from asking individuals to stay home on their personal lives, on the businesses that they work for, that we will need a stimulus package. So we would need dollars to go with those kind of statements. We don't want people staying home with, empty refrigerators and, things like that. So we want to make sure that, people are taken care of and that they have access to, services and, it's government. And so, there are a few challenges and, people are less open to apologizing later about decisions. And I understand you want to be as accurate as possible, but I definitely would like more clear direction, and especially from the federal level.
We have a question about our partnership with the University of Virginia, and let me just say that part of our emergency operation plan is to work together. It's a regional emergency operations plan. We're fortunate to have both the university and Albemarle County as partners in a situation like this. So we are working very closely with them. Some of those meetings are every day, and we have staff currently working and assigned over at the University of Virginia, which is housing the Emergency Operations Center. So we're in daily communication with our partners at the university and taking advantage of the resources they have to offer. And one of the roles you play, Dr. Richardson, as part of the policy group is interacting with UVA's leadership. What can you tell us about those conversations and things you've been talking about?
Yes, we continue to have various conversations about different ways that we can work together, and within that group is the county. We all work collectively to ensure that whatever priorities that each individual entity needs, that we're working together to ensure that happens. Just like anything else, it takes time for some things to happen, but for the most part, we have a great relationship, and we try to do what we can for each other.
Well, I want to thank Dr. Richardson and Mayor Walker for joining us today and for supporting the communications department. You've definitely encouraged us to experiment, to be resilient in the name of public service and in these challenging times for our government and our community. And Mayor Walker, I want to give you an opportunity to say some final remarks.
Again, Brian, thanks for doing this. I just want to say thank you to our citizens, our staff, to everyone who is pulling together, working together to, try to figure out these unknown, uncharted times, right? None of us have the answers, and I'm just so thankful that the community is coming together in the way that it is, and I am, definitely feeling, hopeful about what is happening internally to ensure that our citizens are, taken care of. So everyone who's at the Emergency Operations Center, I appreciate whether it's the county or the university for everyone coming together to make sure that we are taking care of our people.
And Dr. Richardson, any final thoughts from you?
Well, I'll say first, I just want to thank you and your team once again for putting this together. Secondly, I'd like to thank our police chief and fire chiefs for what they've been able to do throughout this emergency. I also want to say thank you to all of our employees once again, who are still making sure that we are up and running every day as a city. And also, last, I would like to say thank you to our city council for your support and for us having the ability to work together. I know that we have some trying times right now because, as was mentioned earlier, this is uncharted territory. But I think if we continue to work together and the community continues to work together and they see us all working collectively as one, we'll get through this.
Well, our next show will be on Tuesday, March 31st, and that will be at 11 a.m. And we will have the city's fire chief, Andrew Baxter, start appearing at the top of every show twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it'll be Tuesdays at 11 a.m., Thursdays at 4 p.m. And Chief Baxter will be able to provide an update on the local response to the coronavirus pandemic. Please contact me with your feedback and ideas for future topics and guests. And thank you for watching, and please stay healthy.